Hello?
Kevin Dodge.
Oh, that's me. It's Devin, actually.
This is the speech guys.
The speech guy.
We recently got an email from you.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting to introduce the show. We have a big list to get through. So we apologize it took 3 years to get to you.
Have you gotten your complimentary t-shirt yet?
I got the t-shirt in the mail just last week. I appreciate it. The gift cards were a nice touch.
That's great. Kyle, has your voice changed? My gosh, it sounds like you've aged a generation since we last chatted. Since we last ate sky lunch there on the Current River. You and Ross have that in common. You're the only two guys on this phone call who've been on the Current River with me.
Oh my gosh. Wow, only two. I think an entire generation is being raised up since that happened, actually.
That's
crazy.
Exciting. Matt, this is your guess. I don't want to hog the telephone here.
No,
you got anything to say?
You're good. Kyle and I chatted at least a little bit earlier, but yeah. So Kyle is he's also an established businessman. He owns a PT clinic called Physical. I'll let Kyle introduce himself more if he wants to.
Yeah, Kyle, how do you know the speech guys?
Yeah, so I went to PT school with a number of them. Ross and Matt were in the year ahead of me in PT school at Bradley. And then I met Mike over at Bradley as well when he was a campus minister there after he graduated from U of I.
That's right. Yeah.
We all go back a little way. That's right. That was your gap year. Yeah, we got to know him pretty well. It's funny. Your names came up the other day. We were having dinner with Stacy Haig's brother.
Yeah. What the heck's his name?
Mike.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He biked for babies with us for like half a day once.
You don't remember other Mikes that well?
Kevin, what do you know about the speech guys? I mean, like the podcast.
I've heard it. I've heard a few episodes. I listened to a while back. You guys, from what I understand, that you listen to real and or fictitious speeches from the past, and then comment and then provide your own commentary on it.
Yeah, right? Something to that effect is about right.
Speeches from the Future is season 4. That's a little teaser right there.
Yeah.
Speeches AI
Nostradamus. Yeah,
AI. That's right. AI is going to tell us what speeches are going to come.
Going to subcontract that stuff.
Yeah.
You have any other questions, thoughts? Maybe like a favorite Christmas memory of yours growing up? Memories of this movie, the speech in particular you want to share?
Oh, what a movie! Yeah, this was the Christmas movie growing up. We watched it every year. I remember there's one time at the Newman Center we sat down just before everybody left for Christmas break, and we had a whole bunch of people in that big TV room, and we all watched.
Oh yeah,
it. I think it's one movie I think I could cry to. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now it's been a number. I was talking to Matt. It's been a number of years since I've seen it. Which speech there are two main speeches that come to mind. You tell me which one are you guys going to be listening to today?
Yeah, this is the speech that Jimmy Stewart's character George gives to the Henry Potter's characters after his father has just died, and they're about to lose
they're in the boardroom.
Yeah, boardroom.
They're
exactly.
deciding the future. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Which one would you have done? I mean, we can kind of do both, but do you have another memorable part that's more sticks
the
out?
other one, this movie just came up. I don't know if you guys listened to Joe Rogan.
Sometimes.
He was just last week. He was talking about the speech that Jimmy Stewart's character had on fractional banking lending. Just kind of describing like what's going on when they have the run on the bank. Saying, you deposit X amount of money, but it's in John's house and it's in Larry's.
Right. Yeah. That's everything you need to know about baking right there. That's about where my knowledge begins and ends.
As good as an economics degree. It's great.
Really quick, Kyle, would you have guessed all those years ago you'd be on a podcast with us right now?
Not in my wildest dreams. You never know what's going to put in your path. This is honored, the 50th episode, season 3 finale. What an honor, you know?
Yep.
You think getting married, having kids, you think you have accomplishments in life, and then you throw something like this in your plate.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It's a wonderful life, truly.
It's a wonderful life.
Yeah.
Well named.
If only George Bailey had a podcast, there'd be no movie, because he's like, my life is great. Don't need no angel. Kyle, it's all on you now. We're gonna hand off the show hosting reins. You're gonna introduce us, put your own little spin on it, put your own Jimmy Stewart twang on it, like Matt had suggested. Go for it.
Well, it is my honor to introduce the 50th episode of the Speech Guys, with a holiday special, giving the famous George Bailey speech, from It's a Wonderful Life.
Nice.
Was that good? Is that what you're looking for?
No, it wasn't.
I got
and who's on the show?
And who's on the show? Well, tonight we have Mike Schaefer, the famous Ross Johnson. We have Matthew Schultz, and we have, I believe, is Elaine.
It's Jay.
The tough last one.
Jay? That's close. Okay.
Landon Fry.
Okay. Well, the famous four.
Sure. That will be our spin-off podcast. We'll be podcasting on our best podcast. Landon Free is his name. He's our 4th member. Kyle/Kevin Dodge was the introducer. It's been great. Hey,
which one is it, Kyle or Kevin?
It's Kyle. I thought they were projecting my.
When you see the road,
Michael Schaefer, Ross Johnson, Matt Schultz, and Landon Fry are all here.
It's free.
I've been back in
I'm just gonna say it. I've been thinking it for 10 minutes. I don't want a podcast scared.
Oh yeah.
ashes. Now I've seen the road.
Pregnancy is a beautiful thing. Pregnancy is a gift.
Shit. Oh, there are stories to tell.
What kind of paint sticks to asteroids? Like, if you don't time your wall.
Afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place.
We are called to emerge from that default setting of self-involvement.
All right. Well, welcome. Thanks, Kyle, for that.
Whoa. Stand down, Matt. That was a great intro by...
I thought it was the season of giving, Mike. I thought you were giving the
Nope.
Okay, guess not. All right.
This is a modern Christmas, Kyle/Matt. Okay, just had great intro there by Kyle/Kevin Dodge. But hey, you know what? This is the season of giving. I'm going to let Matt introduce the rest of the introduction.
Introduce.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike, for that intro to the intro to the intro. So this is as Kyle said, the 50th episode of the Speech Guys. And just timing wise, kind of the end of a quad, not enough time for another quad by the new year. So
I am not.
Seems like a good time. Yes. What?
You've
the connection got lost, but it was a good fluid thing, and we're back on now. So
okay, well, trust it was good.
And Audacity picked it up, so there we go. End of a quad, not enough time for a new quad, so we'll just have a one-off holiday special themed episode. I think especially just kids are getting older. I mean, oldest ones too, so not old, but old enough to all right, Christmas is becoming more of a thing, right? He can open gifts now. He couldn't last year. And I feel like our family Christmas traditions are taking shape, like how our family's Christmas wants to go, and just what a good Christmas should look like, and like how to make that happen. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk with the speech guys, kind of get some tips and tricks on that, and just have a good chat about it. It's a Wonderful Life is a classic Christmas movie, and Landon kind of picked the precise speech from it. So I'll let him kind of go into why he selected that.
Yeah, when we're doing holiday, I mean, It's a Wonderful Life is my favorite. It is my second favorite movie ever, right behind Hoosiers. Probably, I don't cry in Hoosiers, but we'll admit, given Kyle let us down the opening of our sentimental side, definitely do usually shed a few tears with It's a Wonderful Life. Not every time, but certainly I watch it every year, probably have for 10 or 15 years. Didn't watch it a lot growing up. I think it's there are a few speeches we're going to dive into. One on argument, his monologue against the Mr. Potter character. There was a quote somebody shared that said it was like, it's a terrifying, asphyxiating story about growing up, relinquish your dreams, having to settle in some areas, and kind of just take responsibility for your family and community, and still just seeing him break down at the end is just kind of gut-wrenching. And I don't know, there's something captivating, real, maybe fearful about that I think has made the drama last the generations. I think the sentimentality of just like the small business, the family business, I can relate to. Certainly, I think a lot of farm families can relate to a lot of those opening scenes of, which son stays, which one goes, how are we going to pass this thing along? Should we pass it along? Why does it exist in a big or corporatized, capitalized world, etc.? I think a lot of themes that have lasted. That is why I chose it.
Well, why don't we take a listen to that speech before we get too lost in the weeds here, or snow maybe.
A minute. You're right when you say my father was no businessman. I know that. Why he ever started this cheap penny-ante building alone, I'll never know. But neither you nor anybody else can say anything against his character, because his whole life was... Why, in the 25 years since he and Uncle Billy started this thing, he never once thought of himself. Isn't that right, Uncle Billy? He didn't save enough money to send Harry to school, let alone me. But he did help a few people get out of your slums, Mr. Potter. And what's wrong with that? Probably... Here, you're all businessmen here. Doesn't it make them better citizens? Doesn't it make them better customers? You said that they... What'd you say just a minute ago? They had to wait and save their money before they even thought of a decent home? Wait for what? Until their children grow up and leave them? Until they're so old and broken down that... Do you know how long it takes a working man to save $5,000? Just remember this, Mr. Potter, that this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? Anyway, my father didn't think so. People were human beings to him, but to you, a warped, frustrated old man, they're cattle. Well, in my book, he died a much richer man than you'll ever be.
I'm not interested in your book. I'm talking about the building and loan.
I know very well what you're talking about. You're talking about something you can't get your fingers on, and it's galling you. That's what you're talking about, I know. Well, I've said too much. You're the board here. You do what you want with this thing. There's just one thing more, though. This town needs this measly one-horse institution, if only to have some place where people can come without crawling to Potter. Come on.
What'd you say a minute ago? They had to wait and save their money before they even bought a decent home? Wait for what? Until their children grow up and leave them?
Yeah, so I mean, in my house, I think that It's a Wonderful Life sort of occupied a pretty traditional standard space, pretty much a standard watch every year. I don't necessarily remember having super duper strong feelings about it, but I definitely always enjoyed it. Particularly the Jimmy Stewart character and actor just in general.
Yeah, for sure.
First reactions to this particular speech within the context of it. I did, it's some years ago, realize that Henry Potter, I mean, that's pretty much Harry Potter. So that was an ironic little spin that came later decades. I think maybe the most striking thing, I mean, it did always sort of come off a little bit simple or facile of a speech. But, in maybe some of this I'd heard before, but it was sort of like freshened up or re-realized, is that actually, even when this film came out, as I understand it, it was sort of perceived that way, as then, oh, George Bailey's simple-minded, naive, blah, blah, blah. Which I think gives those themes and George Bailey's earnestness a little bit more. It's more attractive. It feels more genuine that it was perceived that way then, as well. So yep, that's my first reactions.
Yeah, so It's a Wonderful Life. I think probably it sounds like everybody was definitely watched every year in the Johnson household. Just kind of a normal holiday. Yeah, not like a huge, like we all sit down at the to have to watch it, but it definitely, I mean, remember watching it most years. I definitely feel like I remember watching it once in room 7 at Neighbor House. Landon, I bet you were probably there. And I feel like I appreciated it in a new way, because I don't think I necessarily remembered some of the humor in it and how it's actually just funny and enjoyable to watch as an adult. It's actually, Julie and I usually try to, each season or seasonal change, we try to kind of think through or make a list of, okay, what are the things we want to do to kind of really embrace, this current season that we're in. So, fall, make sure we, to have the kids outside by a bonfire, do some marshmallows, kind of just picking things that are kind of stereotypical. And yeah, so It's a Wonderful Life is definitely on the list to be watched between now and Christmas. I think also too, I appreciated it a little bit, kind of like Landon said, a little bit with the farmer thing. I feel like I always saw my dad a little bit in George Bailey. So
for sure.
So my grandfather owned the grocery store in a small town, and then my dad had a younger brother. And then dad was the one that ended up taking over and running the stores, and just did a lot for a small community for multiple generations and for a lot of years. So I feel like I always saw a little bit of dad in George. Yeah, so I think my comment just about this, how maybe simple or almost naive it seems. I think in some ways I appreciate that even more now. To not get too much into all of our talking from the recent camping trip, just having to live in the adult world and deal with businesses and money and just all of those things, I think there's just more of an appreciation for just what George was trying to do, I guess. So,
yeah, and it's funny, Landon, you mentioned the Hoosiers, or Hoosiers is your number one movie of all time. Because I remember I didn't see that movie until I was probably 29 or so, 28, 29 or whatever. Everyone's eyes just got huge. But I remember when I watched it.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
But I remember when I watched it, the first thought I had was oh, this is a cheesy movie. But I think the reason it's cheesy isn't because it's cheesy. It's cheesy because it's the movie that all other movies base themselves off of. It's this kind of I feel like that is the quintessential sports movie, and every movie wants a piece of it. So every movie has a piece of it, and it becomes whatever. So I think it's easier to interpret it that way. But But anyhow, so I feel like it's a similar analogy with this, because I think the first time I saw it, I was probably a teenager and just, heartless and stupid. And I just remember kind of thinking like, oh, it's whatever, nice cheesy Christmas movie. I've probably seen it 3 or 4 times, and it is one of those movies where every time I see it, I always think like, oh, this is better than the last time. Which admittedly I haven't watched it in a couple of years, but yeah. But Claire and I have definitely put it high on the list, as Ross mentioned. Yeah, it's like we want to make that a thing this year for sure. As regards to the speech, I could see what you guys mean with, like, sure, it's kind of sentimental in how he makes his argument, but I think there are a lot more nuanced ways to argue his point without being kind of strictly sentimental, which is kind of, his approach there. And that's kind of what I think is worthwhile talking about, both in regard to like just economics, but also with Christmas in general. I feel like there's a lot there that can inform us in terms of celebrating Christmas well. So,
yeah, I kind of wonder if, thinking about the speech we just quoted, the one he gave to Potter, you guys said that was cheesy. A reviewer called it a Currier and Ives veil to the whole movie. I don't know if that was at the time it came out. I wonder if people did speak that plainly and directly, or if it is just like way over the top and too emotional.
I get what you're saying. I think that the most natural metaphor to say yes and no to that would be, and I've posed this question to my mom before, because we watch movies like this back in the day, and it seems like, what, was everyone just in a good mood back then? It's like, oh, hey, Charlie, hey, what's going on with you? Oh, how many kids? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, okay, so if people watch a movie today in the future,
everyone depressed.
Exactly. Everyone's suicidal. And so I think that, any sort of film is basically exaggerating everything. So it's like, yeah, people are, I think, legitimately have a mopier disposition now than they did then. But people also don't always look quite as mopey now as they do in movies.
It's a good point. Yeah, great metaphor.
I think this sort of feels like a natural discussion question, sort of lead things off with that Ross had posed. Right. I mean, George Bailey is basically, through all of his decisions, prioritizing God, family, his community over material things, namely going off to college with that big old briefcase and, going off on the honeymoon with Mary and other things. And Ross had posed I think that a lot of people love this movie because they see that, and it's like, that's the natural, attractive set of priorities, right? But why do so many, just put it simply in his words, why do we get pulled away from it? Why do we tend to make decisions that do not seem to prioritize those things? And this can also give us an opportunity to give more of the nuanced layers that Captain Matt is looking for.
So most people, or us, if in George's shoes, would have gone to college and gone on the trip. And
sure, yeah. Another sort of interesting illustration to sort of sharpen this question, and I marked this down the notes, but when I was running last Sunday, obviously a lot of people have their Christmas stuff up now, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, there are a lot of nativity scenes out, which presumes to imply some sort of belief in Christ. And it just seems, I don't know, maybe if you ran the statistics, it would match up, but it just seems like there's way more plastic apparatuses of Jesus than there are people who are boldly doing things that actually matter for Jesus. Not saying it's bad to have plastic Jesus in your yard or anything, but I feel like there's more things that matter a lot more that people aren't doing. Okay. So, sum up discussion questions. People are attracted to George, prioritizing God, family, community. We like that. It seems heroic, but it seems like we're not doing that quite so much anymore, despite giving it lip service.
I mean, I think we give it lip service. I think there are actually a decent number of people who
we're the speech guys.
I think there are a decent number of people who would actually advocate against that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like God, obvious. Like I think that's an easy one for people to kind of dismiss. Family, I even that I feel like is a I don't know. I think that like there seems to be a growing trend of like I don't know, people still value their families, but there seems to be a growing trend of like that just being kind of disjointed, and I don't know, maybe it's just I'm older and people grumble about it more. But yeah, I guess there just seems to be like a growing dissatisfaction and maybe de-emphasis on that, at least among younger folks. And then community, yeah, I guess even that, like everything just seems to become more nationalized and more bigger scale, like, you know, Amazon, Walmart, that sort of stuff.
Branded.
Branded. And I mean, even in terms of like political types of things, like how many people could name their city council representative? You know,
yeah.
like, yeah, there's no, and how many people are part of an actual club that meets in person more than once a month, you know? Yeah, I mean, just stuff like that. Just everyone seems to be rather disengaged with all of those things, whether they're explicitly preached against or not. Like maybe not, I don't know, but there does seem to be like a pretty general cultural shift away from like all three of those things that we mentioned. But in terms of why, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that question is different for every person. I mean, why do I not do it? Honestly, like I fall prey to like just the worship of convenience, you know? I think that is like a really hard thing to steer clear of. I think especially as a parent, you give yourself a lot of leeway to be like, oh, well, I'm doing all, you know, like kids take so much time and effort and all these things. So it's like, well, why not just buy all my stuff on Amazon, because I can do that while the kids are asleep. And it takes, 15 minutes instead of 2 hours of driving between, local stores that sell stuff for more higher prices. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of, I feel like there's more and more excuses now than ever to do that, simply because of, technology, convenience, and that sort of stuff. And like I did buy some Christmas gifts on Amazon, like literally yesterday. And I remember like going to sleep and asking Claire, like, am I a sissy for, am I a sellout, for doing that sort of thing? Because Claire and I have had talks like this in the past. And
I think something that really strikes the core of It's a Wonderful Life is just how he is constantly sacrificing himself, I guess, or he's making these selfless choices. So, I mean, it's the flow of the movie, right? He doesn't get to go to college. He doesn't get to go on his honeymoon. I mean, it's literally the movie. So, and I feel like people definitely our age, I don't know about the older, I don't know how much older than us or when this kind of phenomenon started, but I feel like we really had preached to us individualism kind of, you do what you want to do. You do what makes you happy. Dream big. Like there was this constant emphasis on the self. I feel when we were going through school, and I definitely think that it's still that way today. And yeah, just trying to think about kind of the career path type questions, and it just seems like they were all be whatever you want to be. I mean, just all those type of not that we have to like bring up cheesy phrases, but that just seemed to be the overall point. And I feel like that those are conflicting things a lot of times in real life. You can't sometimes it seems like you're called to not do what you want to do or to in the moment. And maybe the comfort thing is a little bit, and we could talk comfort, like Matt had said, or I'm sorry, convenience, but I think comfort is another one. We're just constantly looking inwards and looking at ourselves. And so I think that it would be hard for someone that was brought up in all of that to understand or to make the same decisions that George did. It seems like everybody would just not even, like, they would have just gone to school in the first place. They wouldn't have even, let alone, given up the honeymoon and all the way down the line. So I feel like the movie, I think, does a good job at, maybe not intentional. I don't know how intentional it was. I mean, the overall point is intentional, but I think the movie does a good job at combating an individualistic mindset and shows that will not lead you ultimately to happiness and fulfillment and all these things. It's the giving of yourself and all these, love and sacrifice and these type of things that George kind of was forced to do that ultimately, right, end up in a wonderful life. So kind of the why, it seems like, I don't know, I feel like, and I don't want to get too like, oh, that single thing is the why, but that jumps out to me as something that would make it hard for people to.
Such a big and deep question. I don't think there's just such a pull of the economy of material gain, of succeeding, of I don't know, making it in America. I think it's a Western value, perhaps more exacerbated by being an American value to go, do, achieve, grow, progress at a sacrificial cost of community, faith, responsibility, family. And yeah, you've got to be mindful to draw lines in the sand of like where too much is enough. I think looking at all of the scenes, though, we're giving him a lot of credit. I think he was a reluctant sacrificer. Like, he never overly chose to do the thing, to stay, to commit. I mean, he was, dragged into it. Even the the scene with Mary when they kind of do get together in her parlor, like, man, he was just awkward. Like, he didn't want to be there if his mom pushed him there. I mean, he was just, I don't know if there's probably some weird romantic dynamics there, but reluctant anyway. And so what I'm trying to think through or understand was that, I don't know, his fate or destiny, or was he not leaning into his calling and it still worked out for him? I'm not sure.
I think to answer, to contribute to my question, I think that there is a lot of different reasons that are going to matter more to different people, but something similar to what Matt said sticks out to me, and some illustrations that seem particularly resonant, that, yeah, things like religion and family and community are so messy. Even the best iterations of them are so messy. And thinking in terms of like parish life, when you're flashy Catholic from your favorite Newman Center, it's like you have a very distorted perception of what parish life would look like. And there's definitely a little bit of arrogance, particularly towards, speaking from my own experience and also just what I've heard friends say, arrogance towards the pastor, like, oh man, they need to be preaching this or that or doing this or that, or why are people lukewarm and blah blah. I mean, there's certainly space to certainly push your parish for sure, but there is also just showing up for the fish fry and being that random guy to ask where the box of breading is, and helping move the Christmas tree displays out for Christmas stuff. Doing this with all like new and different people, and with the bossy people who've been doing it for 25 years and don't believe in using the word brothers in the gospel reading and goofy stuff like that, right? Like that's, and I think, yeah, that's exactly the kind of messy parish life and church life that we're called to participate in. That's sort of from an interesting perspective, because that's like from the people who are sort of in it. But still, that's sort of like what it is. Even from the standpoint of like community, family, I people tend to have more natural experiences with. But like growing up, we were in 4-H, right? And man, it was meetings once a month on a Saturday, and then showing animals in every summer in the heat, and chickens and model rockets and stuff like that, right? And then contributing to community. And there were fun things, but I would have probably tried to get out of it if I could, so I could have played more basketball. But in retrospect, I really appreciate it, and I'm glad I did it, because I look back and see it was a sort of messy participation community. Not like to the fault of anyone by any means. Certainly could have been a lot messier, but it's just, that's what community life looks like, is just showing up on a Saturday morning at St. Joe's Parish Center at 7 a.m. and listening to old business, new business, attendance, and eating duplex cookies after. Like, that's it. That's what community life is like. And it's certainly much preferable for a lot of us to just do other things on Saturday morning.
I don't know. I imagine there was probably some friendliness that happened, either amongst you or siblings, or even your parents between their
there was, certainly lots of friendly. Oh, and there was friendliness. There were definitely. Yeah.
So I think it's I think there's still a friendship there, even if it's not your closest, whatever, but or one you particularly
it's
enjoyed. But I guess like friendship, community, and I, at least with the speech, like this business, all go together, for George Bailey. And like, he doesn't say it in this sort of like philosophical sense, but like, but that does seem to be like a natural flow of things. Like maybe even in that order. I don't know. I haven't thought that hard about the order, but you make friends with someone, even if you don't like them that much, like you're just like, you're friendly with your neighbor, you're friendly with some people down the street, even if they're not your favorite, like, but you don't pick who you live next to entirely. You know what I mean? Like, someone else is going to move in, and, who knows? But yeah, like you still, but I care about my neighbors. You know what I mean? Like, I love my neighbor, Mitch. I doubt he would ever listen. There are some things I'm like, wow, he's kind of a wild guy. Like, I don't know if I like all this, but like, he is I cannot, like, I love having him as a neighbor, not just because he let me borrow his weed whacker my entire first summer. He lived there, but just like, we don't spend a ton of time together. He's not a close friend. He's not a guy I would ask advice on a serious thing with, but he's still just like someone I care about because he's there. And if I did own my own business and he were to come in, I would take care of him. You know what I mean? His friendship and the community that builds. And then like all of these business interactions, like they all build this community. Maybe it's friendship, business, then community. I don't know, whatever order it happens in. I just, there's this like beautiful connection there that George Bailey has and George Bailey values. And even then, this is what, 1934. Like, I don't know if it's a modern problem, but there are these, things that drive that apart, you know? I don't know. I mean, I know Ross, you and Landon both have, kind of family business types of experiences. And I don't know. I think that hearing some of those stories might be interesting to kind of hear what goes into that and how.
Yeah, I feel like that was pretty much my whole just childhood. So again, my parents ran a grocery store. My grandpa had ran it before them. So they were the second generation to do it in a small town of about 900 people. So my dad would tell stories again, I kind of agree with Matt. I don't think it's a modern problem, but there's something seems to have also changed over time, at least in this small niche of society, in the sense like he would just tell stories about, I don't know, so just the funny ones that pop to mind. I mean, like when he started working, like I don't think people would always pay. I think they'd like write stuff down and they could come do it later. Or at one point there was an ice storm. Like, I mean, we were out of power. You guys probably remember it. It was like 2007, I think. It was like 9 days. So Dad would open the stores up and people would just take flashlights around and they would write down on a piece of paper what the number was and they'd bring it up front and they would just like plug it on a calculator. But he would the store was always open so people could get food. But kind of like Matt said, I mean, I think there was people, because again, small towns, like Dad was also on the fire department. So like, I don't remember the guy's name, but somebody that maybe was drinking the night before, drank way too much, was there at 6 a.m. fixing a generator for Dad so they could get the stuff. I mean, it was just stuff like that, I feel like was just very commonplace. So to stick with the Christmas theme, because I still like this story and I'm sad we can't do it anymore. Christmas Eve, the store is always open. So we would always have drinks in the back. So Grandpa would be drinking Crown Royal and 7-Up and whatever. And again, this is from a guy that would literally smoke cigars and you'd find them. Apparently people would just find them on shelves, places, because he would forget about them. But so people in town would just stop by and they would just walk to the back room and have a drink with Bob. And and if it ran out, he would just go get another bottle from the shelves. So there was just a lot of like that type of stuff that could happen. It was easier being like a smaller town, but I feel like you could have that in a big city too, because you're going to have neighborhoods and things of that sort. So I don't think that it necessarily has to be unique to a small town. But so for us, at least, it was kind of synonymous with where I grew up and having the stores. It was just kind of one and the same. I think then to kind of branch out from that a little bit and maybe get into some of your other questions too, I think that it's an interesting kind of question and I don't know, I haven't thought about it to articulate, but I guess why does the business exist? And I think that when you step back, I think the answer maybe should be for the common good. So, we have this business, yes, to make money and supply our needs, but there's kind of an end to it, if that makes sense. So it seems like for, my example, maybe to provide food for the community, or in George's, example, so they can have a couple, decent rooms and a bath or whatever. Versus, I feel like, because in a lot of businesses, it seems like it's strictly to make money and to make as much of it as you can. And I think that's just kind of maybe a divergent idea that, they're just kind of incompatible. Yeah. It's the Potter versus the Bailey, I guess. I agree that that's not a modern problem. So I think that, you can tell these stories about the good, but there's probably just as many about the other side of it. But
I don't know at what point you said, it might be in big cities too. I mean, the bigger the city, like the more anonymous you become. I grew up in a town of, the bigger town was 2,800, 3,600. And like when you went into the grocery store, like you know everyone at the grocery store, like almost everyone, or like you know of them. And like in a bigger city, like you're not gonna like, you might see somebody here and there. But just the social fabric of, you kind of know everybody's business or see them around. I think that plays a part in what is community, especially across like so many different, probably like economic statuses, whether it is like the worker at the grocery store or the Johnsons own the grocery store, or like there's the doctor in town, the judge, like there's a little bit more of a vertical cut. And then, the larger the city, everybody's kind of segmented by class for any particular activity that they do. And you have to really work hard to get across that. On the economy thing, I think what you see with like the Bailey Brothers Building and Loan, I mean, it was a small business. They operated like almost on a barter system in some ways and just basically ran like zero margin. And you probably had a much larger percentage of the economy without a pure profit motive. It was just like a lifestyle business. This is who we are. This is what we do. Like we make a living, and then it goes back into the business or we share it. And most everyone was operating that way. And then as things have been rolled up, consolidated, put onto the public market, where certainly our retirement accounts benefit from the profit motive, at the local level, wherever you may buy that good or service, there is more of an incentive for, how it's going to play in the market versus what really matters.
Summarize what you just said in 2 sentences.
Just noticing George's interactions with his business and the economy of Bedford Falls made me realize that if a community is more small business than not, there's less of a profit motive and quite a bit more sharing. And I think the opposite end of that is, clicking on Amazon, getting things overnight, and it's much easier, but it's much more professionalized and not localized, and there's something lost there for.
And I think it's inhuman. I think that's like, not to be too harsh on that dynamic, but yeah, you don't go to the grocery store and realize Bob's having a drink in the back, and and then you get to know him. Like, gosh, that just like that story, Ross, like that, man, that warms my heart. I love hearing that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the road rage thing, when like everyone's like angry and mean because there's a windshield between people, but if you were walking on the street and you guys people almost run into each other. Of course, obviously it's not as deadly of an incident or dangerous of an, but like there's never going to be that much anger. But yeah, because, but the anonymous windshield is like, oh, that guy's but we'll have to bleep that one out. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, watch your mouth. It's only damn in hell.
Okay, sorry. But yeah, and I think we do end up paying for it as much as like, yeah, it's way cheaper, way more convenient. The time I would have spent in the store that I didn't spend because I went on Amazon. Great, now I can make money or whatever. But I think we do end up paying for it in that I feel like there's insurance for everything. Trip insurance, like you're always trying to spend money to protect your things. That seems to be almost more costly than it is to just like buy at a store where someone cares about you, and if they screw you over, then you'll know. Like you're you know who that is. You know what I mean? Like Bob's not going to screw you over, one, because he's a great guy, but also because you know him, you know what I mean? And you're going to be fixing his car next week. And there's this, and it's not even just like a retribution thing. It's a cohesion and common good thing. That you end up like, sure, you might pay more for groceries, but what you get along with it is like immensely more valuable.
I was driving home this evening from something, and I've got this thing called climber's elbow. So it was saying I should have like some dumbbells and just kind of curl my wrist essentially. But I was contemplating like, should I just order those dumbbells on Amazon, or should I go to the little guy like Walmart? Or some brick and mortar store to support someone who's semi more tethered to the community, because, you know, Amazon is not the company that sponsors the local 5K. I'm sure they do it somewhere, right? But there's yeah. And you can play that analogy with other things, you know, with what Matt was ordering on Amazon. Like, should he have gone to the 50 different stores to get one screw and then get a different size screw? You know, you get it. And I don't necessarily think that, you know, we need to draw stark lines of, you know, and no one's trying to do this, but don't ever shop at Amazon or vice versa. But I'm thinking of a scene. But I think there's a case for a certain commercial earnestness. And I'm thinking of a scene from The Emperor's Club with Kevin Kline, where, what was his name? Mr. El Zubi. He was walking across the grass of the quad on campus. And Kevin Kline's character, the teacher, says to Mr. El Zubi, Mr. El Zubi, walk on the sidewalk, please. And Mr. El Zubi, the kid, 14-year-old boy or something, he says, right, it's better for the grass. And then Kevin Kline says, no, it's better for you. And it gets to the point, it's like, it's not a sin to walk across grass. In the same way, it's not a sin to go shop at Amazon necessarily, but it's better for you to go and buy that missized screw at Ace Hardware.
I cannot.
When it is possible.
Yeah. That is such a deep reference, and also a top 5 movie of mine. I literally watched it 2 weeks ago.
What movie is this?
The Emperor's Club.
Emperor's Club. Okay.
Oh my gosh. It's hard to find. I cannot believe you just quoted that. Mr. Hundert. Oh.
It has the same aesthetics as the Dead Poets Society, but a more optimistic feel.
But Rust, so like, I guess maybe the finest fine point is people care about you if people near you care. So why don't we engage with them? You know, we
right.
The purpose.
So I was just trying to kind of, okay, let's get, I mean, not that these clouds are bad clouds, but like, you know, get out of the level of ideas and like,
yeah.
So, right, everybody would love, right?
Is this water? I think this is water.
Right. Everybody would love to know the mechanic in town and go fishing with the pastor and go have a drink with Bob in the back room. Which is one of my favorite memories, no joke. Just bought my Crown Royal today because I drink Crown and Sevens from this point until Christmas only. But so what are some things I feel like we all kind of appreciate this, and I feel like most people would at least recognize, yeah, there's a lot of good in that. But we're obviously not doing it perfectly. So what are you think some things, and this is like an honest question. So not like, don't like point to me and challenge me personally here, but sort of like, what are some things you think we could do better to help foster, not like, maybe just going to Ace Hardware instead of Amazon, but like, other than that, are there things you think we could legitimately do to foster this kind of type of community we're so nostalgic for?
Well, obviously the challenge isn't coming up with examples because, in fairness, we all do choose to shop at Ace Hardware. So we do choose to make life difficult for ourselves sometimes, right? And do that. Could we do it more? Yeah, we probably could be. A number has popped in my head, like, the same way that we're called to tithe, right? 10% to the church and charities. Like, what about tithing 10% of your expenses towards local? So, you buy whatever you need, but 10% is local business. That's an interesting way to manage that.
A lot of the things we don't like are very consumer driven. And I think just to one degree, not being afraid to be the jerk in the office who like shines a light on some of that. I think there's somewhat of like an evangelization mindset that might need to be done for that type of thing, and just and just at least discussing those types of topics. For example, like restaurants, I think are low hanging fruit for shopping local, in that restaurants are about the same price wise in terms of local versus like your chain restaurants. Like it's not as big of a price difference as like getting local vegetables, which would be like double. So I just made that comment at work once. Yeah, maybe someone was offended, but who cares? Like, I think that's a valuable point to like just put out there. It's like, all right, low hanging fruit restaurants, like let's just make sure to eat local restaurant, whatever. But even beyond that, I think talking with your neighbors is a good thing. And just knowing, and just like, I guess, prioritizing your neighbors first. Like the people who are actually closest to you, like physically closest to you, who you didn't choose. There's some people close to you that you choose, your family, whatever, but
I've been shocked. So I live in a neighborhood, and like sometimes we try to play outside in the front yard with the kids just to kind of try to foster that type of mindset. But like nobody does that.
Really? Huh.
Oh yeah. So my neighbor next door, he's a super nice guy. So like my kids had a lemonade stand this summer, and he made sure he came over and he's paid $4 instead of 50 cents for two, whatever. And like he mowed my leaves for me. He didn't have to do that, but when I was gone deer hunting last weekend, like my front yard got filled with leaves, like he chopped, like he took care of that for me. So I really appreciated that. So I shouldn't say it's gone, but like there's a house a couple doors down the other way. They got a bunch of kids, and like you just never see them. And maybe that's just my neighborhood, but it does seem like there's not much. Like I said, sometimes we'll do that. It seems like people just drive down the street, drive into their garage, close the garage door behind them, and you just don't see them. And it's just an interesting dynamic, I guess. We blamed COVID when we moved in, but I don't think we can blame COVID anymore. And yes, Landon, they did open their garage doors.
This is going to be a little more abstract, but I think it leads to real action.
Back in the clouds,
back
baby.
in the clouds a little bit. Just going to dive up and dive back down. But like, think of your life,
raising the roof.
Think of your life as like a poem or a story. And like, how boring of a story is it if you're like, yep, I bought the most efficient groceries and I didn't overspend on this. And I definitely made smart decisions on, I'm really glad I shopped at Amazon because, man, that extra $8.20 I saved, like it's a boring story. No one likes it. Get out of here, but George Bailey, everyone knows his story. And like, I don't know, maybe that's just I think imagine that. Imagine your life as a story or a poem or a whatever. All this adventure we long for, I think everyone longs for, can be had. It's just going to look different, like a video game. It's going to look different than, I don't know, I mean, I guess this is a movie, but maybe it looks like this, but not not like an action movie or something. But
I like the fact that you brought up the word adventure, because I think that that's something else that this mindset of he didn't get to do what on a superficial level was the adventure, right? He didn't get to go to the Fiji Islands and wherever else was on his suitcase. It's a similar thing, like Tolkien talked about it, or not talked about it, like J.R. Tolkien wrote the best adventure trilogy ever. But he lived in some boring little hamlet or something in England. So I think there's just kind of this idea that to live an adventurous life, you have to go off and do these great, huge things. And that's definitely what George thought. at the beginning of his life. And I think a lot of people, that's why a lot of people, or the similar mindset, like people who talk about having kids or having a family, they feel tied down. Domestic life is boring, even though maybe it's the most adventurous, fulfilling life they could ever live.
So this is a Christmas movie.
It did not originally come out as a Christmas movie. It was just a movie.
Oh. What time of year did it come out? I don't know if I remember that.
I don't know the time of year, but
I know it was a box office flop initially.
But it wasn't like...
I believe it was July.
Yeah.
Oh, it came out in July, really?
That's where the term Christmas in July came from.
Get out of here. You're making that up.
That's not true.
I was going to say.
Nope. It's been put in that box. Anyway, sorry.
For all practical purposes, it is a Christmas movie.
For sure now.
And a lot of Christmas movies seem to focus on this theme of this sort of anti-materialist theme, right? So A Christmas Carol, kind of similar things with Scrooge and all that. So yeah, focus, de-emphasizes materialism, emphasizes sharing, giving. How do we balance that with also, Christmas is a feast, right? So it's a feast day. We're supposed to go big in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. How do we balance the George Bailey anti-materialism with also the festivities? I don't know if demands is too strong of a word, but requires maybe. I don't know. Or would we rather go with the how do we make for a truly rich Christmas season question?
Is this our final bell? Or
I don't know. I guess we are pretty far along.
I feel like we haven't had enough Christmas. I feel like
Christmas, then final bell.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Maybe let's do what makes for a truly rich Christmas. I think that might be it's a broader question, but maybe gives more latitude to how to celebrate Christmas well.
Well, I think that something as I wrote notes, Advent, it's sort of like how we're not supposed to eat meat on Fridays still, but no one really knows that. We're supposed to do something. Like Advent is also still supposed to be this time of, right, penance and fasting. Something, doing something. Maybe not as hardcore as Lent. So last year is the first year that I actually did that. I gave up my phone for anything non-functional. And I really appreciated that. And that obviously helped sharpen the sense of anticipation for Christmas, building up to, the rejoicing, the feasting. So I'll definitely do that again. I'm looking at places, a couple of different places to volunteer as well during Advent. But something I've started doing with gifts for like godchildren, when I give them money just to help sort of sharpen their sense of gift being something to share, like giving them, $25 or something. And here is $5 for the bank and $10 for you and $10 to give to someone else, right? So they still get like the little dopamine kick of like getting a little cheddar cheese, but also realizing like, oh man, it feels good to give too. And so helps, I think, sort of sharpen that. So one can do that obviously with Christmas gifts as well.
To bounce off Mike, I would definitely agree. I think it takes some preparation for like kind of you can't, to really appreciate something, there's got to be this sense of kind of longing and like, not that you're working for it, but that there's a sense that you want it, right? So, most people, right, Thanksgiving and then boom, Black Friday, Christmas. It seems like kind of letting yourself build up to it, I think is going to be helpful to appreciate Christmas more. I definitely know that was my experience doing Exodus 90 prior to Easter. And still, even though I don't do Exodus 90 every year, there still is kind of a I think an appropriate, like longing for Easter. They got stuck in me from that. So I think that there's a similar thing. Like you should want it, and there's something to be said for, I think, having to wait for it. Celebrating Advent well can help, the richness of Christmas. I mean, we could talk about I don't want to say cheesy, but yeah, right. Jesus is the reason for the season. Like keeping in mind something actually happened on Christmas. It's not just Santa and gifts. I think helps that and like puts you in the right mindset for it. And then I guess so 2 things then. So we try to slow it down with the kids. So we don't let all of our Christmas we don't do all of our decorating all at once. Saturday after Thanksgiving, we go cut down the Christmas tree at the Christmas tree farm. We come home, we put a fire in the fireplace, eat some popcorn, watch the Polar Express, kind of make it this kind of start of the season in a very kind of nostalgic way with the fire and, that type of thing. But like we didn't let it put the ornaments up yet. And we don't have the stockings hung. So I feel like we have tried to kind of make it we kind of work up to it, if that makes sense, to kind of try to instill in them this kind of idea, like it's not here yet. You can't go crazy yet. There's still more to come. And then celebrating after Christmas. So, right, it's an interesting, like Joy to the World or these like Christmas songs, like they're made for Christmas. So it's interesting that, they play before Christmas and then on Christmas, they all just stop. It's like, that makes literally no sense. And as I've started to do this more, like we've started as a family to do this, I feel like I've noticed more how fast people stop celebrating on the 26th. It's like a pet peeve of mine when like in the workplace, 26th, like boom, Christmas trees down. I mean, wipe that place clean, make it look as bleak as possible. And let's get back to Amazon shopping and let's suffer. It's like, it's actually happened now. Like we should celebrate afterwards a little bit. So I think that we have tried to make a point of, keeping the tree up for a while after Christmas. That's when we really blare the Christmas music. I'm the weird guy that doesn't take my lights down for a couple weeks afterwards. Just things like that. I feel like to try to prepare for Christmas and then the celebration starts as opposed to celebrate hardcore and then it's done forever.
All the way till Epiphany, right?
Yeah, I do take my tree down a little soon though, because the city does do free Christmas tree pickup.
You monster!
What do you do with the Christmas tree? What am I supposed to do with that?
Ross, question: since you're a few kids ahead of all of us, how do you think of Santa, leaning into Santa? Anybody not going to do Santa?
We do Santa, and we don't make an emphasis on Santa. I guess I'd put it that way. Yeah, and I don't want to say that there's a right or wrong or get into that type of stuff, but yes, we do. We try hard to embrace Advent, and then we try not to make like a mega deal about Santa. It's like we don't go sit on Santa's lap at the department store, or we do get the kids get a gift from Santa. We try to talk about the actual Saint Nicholas, and I know some people kind of try to like fuse them together. In our home, we intentionally separate them, just because someday when the kids figure out that Santa's not real, I don't want them to think Saint Nicholas also isn't real because of that. But I feel like you could say the same thing about any holiday, how the world celebrates Christmas, Halloween, other things. Like we don't absolutely say no to all of it, but I feel like try to maybe put it in its place a little bit.
I have a very, very brief, like, forehead slapping anecdote that y'all will appreciate on the note of Santa and belief. So when I was teaching, I was talking to another dad. This was actually on the way to the March for Life. We were on the bus talking. And I don't remember how this came up, but the dad was talking with his son about Santa Claus, and the son was apparently like starting to wonder, like, oh, is Santa real or not? Which, in my mind, if the son is, if they're older than 5, 6 and they're having doubts, like, okay, just let him run with it. He doesn't exist. But okay. I think this kid was like 8 or 9 though, which is a pretty good age to cut it off. So this kid's having doubts, and the dad says, well, you can't see Jesus, but you believe in him. And apparently the son was like, yeah, I guess you're right. So I guess Santa Claus must be real then. And I like looked at the dad and was like, what? No. Because exactly what Ross is saying, but like to an even bigger extent, like
Jesus isn't real.
to tether Jesus to Santa and that existential and faith crisis, which is going to inevitably come up when he realizes Santa is not real. And then when I like made the forehead slap towards the dad, he's like, well, hey, I'm not a theology teacher, but it's like, use your brain. Like, how do you think this string of logic is going to go? And then, two, if your son is 8 or 9, why are you putting any effort to convince him Santa is real? So, okay, I know, preaching to the choir here, but
there's some simplistic, I don't know, it's not a real spiritual thing, but a way to believe in magic that is enamoring for a child.
It is.
That I think has some
sounds
value.
like Landon's just gonna strain it on for years.
It is hard. It's funny. It's hard to answer a question with that because you can't actually make a good answer. Like doesn't make sense. So it's hard to make a good answer to it. So like the other day, like I think Thomas asked me, like, how does he get down the chimney? I was like, that's a good question. Because he can't.
How does Jesus get down the chimney?
I didn't want to try to tether my kid's entire faith belief to that, but just thinking about it, it's like, well, that's actually a pretty solid question because he can't, because it wouldn't make any sense. So how do you answer that?
You've seen the Santa Claus, how Tim Allen gets down various air ducts.
Sucked in.
Sucked in.
It's one of the only movies that plays that does not have Santa in it. It's a Wonderful Life.
Huh.
And it's definitely a Christmas movie.
Did everyone go? I feel like we did. I didn't even go, but that's okay.
Well, I mean,
so now let's do the real final bell.
That wasn't it wasn't the final bell.
Yeah, we're still talking Christmas, Mike.
It's getting late. I gotta wake up at 4.
Oh, shoot. All right.
I think we should string this out just to make him suffer, become more like George Bailey.
That's right. It's part of your Advent sacrifices, Mike. But I guess in addition to making, like Ross, I love what you said, just about slowing things down, building anticipation, and celebrating on the back end more than other people. And just appropriately, because that's when the season starts. I think just living. I mean, we talked about like a lot of the economic stuff kind of earlier, but I think that does play into like if you live in a way that is where you're practicing fasting and self-denial and living moderately, living like George Bailey, I think Christmas will seem more special because you've already made those sacrifices throughout the year. So I'm reminded of like old-timey Christmas gifts of like fruitcake and oranges and cashews, like things that were like, oh yeah, it's just like a normal grocery store run. Maybe not the fruitcake, but oranges and cashews, And now that's like I feel like the luxury and necessity have been blurred quite a bit. I think that's where, like, even if we're buying less and we're paying more for it, that might actually be better, because we have a clearer picture of what what is necessary and what is actually a luxury and what does our vocation not require. I guess that might be a good definition of luxury. And then that's what like Christmas is for, right? So then Christmas, gift giving becomes easier at Christmas, right? Because you deprived yourself of like these fancy things throughout the year. And like now is the time where you can like, all right, these are all the fancy things I haven't bought and haven't, kind of deprived myself of or fasted from, if you want to call it that. And like, great, now that's your Christmas gift. To me, that does make for a really rich Christmas season if you're living that way, if you're living the George Bailey way, where you're making sacrifices for your community. Yeah, there is the one time a year where his friends like, kind of shower him with gifts and kind of get him out of his jam at the end because they care about him, because he cared about them. And now there's this community of love that's like doing things, and there is a risk to that. Like certainly it didn't have to end that way, but yeah, I think it might end that way if we kind of lean into that.
I know we need to final bell it, but I have to say this. I appreciate Mary so much more now than I used to. She was awesome. Like, just think about what I just said. Think about your wife and then watch that movie. and it's just like how much she did in that movie was incredible.
Yeah, the true unsung hero.
Like, when they gave the people like the wine and bread and stuff, talking about your feasting when they bought the house, like what a moment.
Final bell.
Final bell.
All your strength,
Ding, 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 ding.
all your power, all your love.
Ferocious. 15. One more round. And there's no stopping us now. This is our round. Don't stop it now. We're starting, we don't stop. All your spirit, all your power, all your love, everything you've got. This is all life here. Do it now. Yeah.
And we're back. Matt, what do we got for the final bell?
Final bell. What is your favorite Christmas memory?
I will give 2 answers. Short one, I feel like it's just so distinct of the same as like a separation of like childhood and then like adulthood, especially with kids. But I kind of referenced it earlier, so this is more of a collective memory, which I think sometimes is how our brains work anyway. But so just growing up, I mean, every Christmas Eve, it was the same. We'd go to the store, Dad was working, we'd go to the back, and adults would have Crown and Seven or whatever else they wanted to drink, and kids we'd make like kitty cocktails or something like that. So we'd always just hang out and have drinks in the back of the store, then we'd go to mass at church. And I just feel like that just collective, like, I feel like if you said that and then we, the last year of the store, a bunch of family that had like moved out of town and stuff came back, and we kind of just did that pretty hard. I just feel like that was like, there's a really good picture of all of us, and it just, I feel like it kind of embraces the family and then the church kind of, and I guess community at the same time. So maybe it wraps up all 3. I remember it was 2 years ago, I think. So it wasn't 8 or 9, Mike, don't worry. But so my son was 5 or 6 at the time. They were so excited for Santa, and they run to their beds, and they literally went to bed so fast because they said we have to fall asleep because like they wanted to go to sleep. So like I don't know, maybe we told them Santa wouldn't come if they weren't sleeping. I don't know what we said. So like right when they like ran to their beds when we got home from mass, and all I did is I went outside, and it was actually like a crisp, cold night, that kind of icy air. There's snow on the ground, so like there's the crunch as you step through. So I went outside Thomas's window with a bell, and I just started ringing it. And the next morning, he was like, "Dad, I think I heard Santa's sleigh." And he was just like, it was so fun to like just do it in this kind of cold, crispy, snow, crunchy atmosphere. And then just the next morning, totally like, just he had heard that, and I just made it special for him. So it was just kind of fun.
You won't tell him how he gets down the roof.
I didn't tell him anything. It could have been any bell. It could have been George Field. I don't know. Could be anything.
Yeah, I really just think of my favorite collected memories around a couple key traditions. One, just the Christmas Eve service at the Lutheran church. Last song, cut all the lights to the place, light up candles, sing Silent Night, just the church packed. And then we'd always basically our whole life got together with 4 or 5 families who didn't have many other extended families Christmases, and did that. Still do that. And then I think even just like, just even like the Christmas dinner that we make in our immediate family every Christmas night, I know what my mom's going to make, steak, green beans, a couple dessert options, and use our fancy china. And just that's a great highlight in my favorite parts of Christmas.
Yeah, collective memories. Yeah, that's a good word for it, because there's stuff that sticks out in, really sweet and heartwarming ways, like our fake Christmas tree growing up, and the collection of ornaments that we handmade growing up, and the electric train car set underneath the tree, and like wrapping our dog Sarah up in wrapping paper, not like in an excessive way, but something like that, or putting a bow on her, and Yeah, in recent years, mom and dad making a pork tenderloin now at our house. Yeah, and obviously all those things just string together into just sort of a sweet symphony of Christmas memories. But something else that sort of stuck out to me as I was thinking here is some years we would just sit there sort of talking late into the night on Christmas night. The country station down here plays, like a lot of stations, country music continuously for 24 hours or 48 hours. And I remember hearing the last song that year, Nat King Cole, the Christmas song, obviously a great song. And then it ended and it just flipped over to secular stuff. And it felt like, whoa, that's the end of Christmas. Of course, I know it's not, but still is, I don't know, just a bittersweet sense of watching Christmas come and go that year.
I would say a couple things. So Ross, you mentioned you did the bell thing. I remember, and I think especially because so me and my so I have an older sister who's a year older. I have a brother who's about a year younger. So there were the three of us kind of right in a row, and my younger sister was 5 years younger than all of us. So obviously we were all of age to be questioning Christmas when she was kind of in the peak. So my parents, I think, wanted to put a little extra emphasis on keeping the Christmas Santa thing alive for my younger sister. And my dad took soot from the fireplace and kind of like spread it out, like kind of a big chunk right immediately. And then he literally took his boots and like made footprints with soot leading from the fireplace to kind of, and they faded, like they calculated this whole thing to make it look legit. So I remember that year I was like, it just being like cause you start hearing things when you're, 8 years old or so. And it's, cause yes, kids are figuring things out, but
Matt was on Reddit reading these threads. Santa's not real?
It's conspiracy theory nonsense, Mike. Of course Santa's real. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I remember that being like a kind of a fun memory, just to kind of, yeah, I guess I do think that legitimately bought me another year or two of Santa belief. So there was that growing up. My mom always read the night before Christmas. We had this particular like pop-up book that by the time and we did a good job of protecting it. I know some pop-up books with kids just get destroyed in like a matter of days. We did do it. We tried to make it last as long as we could, but like I remember toward the end, it was just like half of the things were torn and didn't work, and just because we had played with it too much. But I can distinctly remember the exact pop-up book that we would read from for the night before Christmas, and that was the last thing we did before we went to bed. I would say, I mean, it's still pretty early in terms of like adult memories for my kids, and Abe was a year old and not cognizant of Christmas of any sort. But there was one thing we did last year, and I know this kind of goes to like, how do we push back against some of like the Christmas, Ross, you mentioned, like, yep, day after Christmas, we're done. Claire and I had like a little Christmas Carol sing-along thing at our house, and invited just a few random people, like a few friends, like closer friends of ours. I invited a couple coworkers, and yeah, just made homemade pretzels, had some homemade beer that I had made, and just other drinks and things. And Claire's sister was in town, and she's an excellent pianist. And I think so, one of her friends played the piano, so he jumped in a little bit, and we just like sang Christmas carols for like a solid like 30 to 45 minutes. And then, the rest of the evening was just banter and visiting. But yeah, I just remember that being like, that's at least early on, like a really cool memory.
Well, it's been a heck of a third season, and we'll see y'all in January. Thanks for drinking.
And thinking.
Thinking with us.
With us.
What if all three of you did and thinking.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
We can.
Let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens. Thanks for drinking.
And thinking.
With us. Be safe out there. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay. Thanks for drinking.
And thinking.
With us.
Merry
Be
Christmas,
safe out
everybody.
there. We'll see you next season.
Merry Christmas.
Cue the music.
And so I'm offering this simple phrase to kids from 1 to 92. Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas to